Hi, today is Wednesday, August 1st, 2018, and we're going to dig into the commandments of Father, the ones that were written in stone. We're going to look at some anomalies in what we're told and what's written to discover what the real truth is about these commandments. Let's begin with looking at the text in Exodus 20 that has what we are told is the Ten Commandments. We're going to look to see if that is accurate. Is there actually 10, or is there a different number there?
One indication that there's a different set of numbers for the commandments than 10 is the fact that there are the Noah laws, sometimes called the Noahide laws. There are 7 of those. Most of those match the commandments that we have in Exodus 20.
On the screen is that text, and you can see by examining all this, there are a few that stick out as being separate commandments. So, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Clearly separated commandments. And we can now look at the traditional list. Now, this listing of the Ten Commandments is what most Christians and people in Judaism see as the order of these commandments and which ones are which. So for most people, this is going to be the standard view of the commandments. 4 supposedly for Father, and then 6 for our relationship with other humans. But for Catholics, here is their version. You will notice that they take the first 2 commandments that most people see as 1 and 2 and combine them, and it's one commandment, that thou shalt have no other gods before me, and thou shalt not make unto any grave image. They've combined that together. Isn't that different? But what they do then to make up for the difference, when they get down to the 9th commandment, because they've combined the 2, now you only have 9, they then separate the 9th commandment into 2 separate commands of thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, and then number 10, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, and so forth. So they make up the difference by splitting that one commandment at the end into 2. So this is giving us a clue that things have been played with, and we can see that with the difference between what Catholics have as the 10 Commandments and what most of the rest of Christianity has as the 10 Commandments. So going back to the order that most of us are familiar with, I'm just going to change the numbering now of 1 through 6 for the commandments to our fellow humans, that Father wants us to, how we are to treat one another, and the 4 that are said to be for Father above. What I'm going to show now is that these 4 commandments that are how we honor Father are actually one commandment that has been split into 4. So just like the Catholics took supposedly the 10th commandment of thou shalt not covet, split into 2 separate, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife and thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. They show us what Judaism and the lying pen and the scribes have done. They have taken this one commandment about the Sabbath and divided it into 4 commandments. Now, you can already see clearly the Sabbath commandment, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Father. How about the one right before that, that we're not supposed to take the name of Father in vain? What's being talked about there? Because Father isn't saying that sounds that come out of our mouth are what's important to him. He's much more than just sounds that come out of our voice to indicate that we're talking about him. The Hebrew word that is translated as name has a primary translation of memorial. The scribes purposely and or the translators purposely did not change it, did not translate it as memorial. They translated as the lesser meaning of this word, name. But you can see if we change name to memorial, thou shalt not take the memorial of the Creator in vain. His memorial is the Sabbath. For the Creator will not hold him righteous that takes his memorial in vain. You will not be righteous according to Father's law if you're not keeping his Sabbath. So I am showing now with these two how they separated into separate commandments. Now we see that it's not talking about his name, it's talking about his memorial, the Sabbath. We are not to forget about it. And that's why it said in the next verse, remember, because right above they're saying, don't forget. So now let's tackle what is supposedly the first commandment towards Father. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And how do we have gods before him? By worshiping them in the same way that he has commanded us to worship him. And we worship him, obey him, by keeping his Sabbath. And so we see that the name is actually memorial. You shall have no other gods by keeping a false Sabbath, a false memorial. And finally, the supposed commandment, thou shalt not have any graven images, any idols. You can see that this is talking about creating something in the image of what Father has made. He made the Sabbath, the true seventh day. We are not to take another day of the week and make that into a likeness of the Sabbath and use it to worship another god. Now I've put it all together and just took that text and put it after the sixth one, so you see that this is the seventh commandment. So there are 7 commandments and they correspond. Father's memorial is the Sabbath, so it follows that the 7th commandment would be about his 7th day. And even notice in how I've translated it here, that thou shalt not make unto thee any man-made image of the Sabbath, which is our Wednesday, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, which the Jews have done. They've created the false Sabbath of Saturday. To be in the earth beneath, Islam has Friday, or come forth that is under the earth, Sunday. Christians keep Sunday because they believe it is the memorial of what came forth from under the earth. Thou shalt not keep their memorials, nor serve their memorials, for I am the Creator, showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So now we can see that there are 7 commandments, 6 towards men, just as there are 6 days that we can work. And then there's the 7th commandment, just as there is the 7th day Sabbath, and it's about Father's Sabbath that we are to keep it.
So now we see the extreme importance of the Sabbath command, since it is the only command by which we honor Father. And we show that we are one with Him by keeping His Sabbath, the day that He set aside for us to be at one with Him. So the Sabbath commandment is of extreme importance now, whereas they minimized it by breaking it into 4 separate commands.
I've also noted here that the first commandment with an asterisk and the sixth commandment, that in the next two videos that I do, we'll dig into how these two commandments have been corrupted, and they are not stating what these commandments actually are about.